Now, if I go through and I review these numbers, that is all our benchmarks. Our benchmarks are done. This is the 7950X. The only other thing that I wanted to do was a bit of thermal tuning, because that hilarity ensues. So we bust open into this MSI Center dealie here, which kind of has, you know, it works, but it sucks at the same time. Click on hardware monitoring. Okay, I guess we do get general hardware monitoring here. CPU fan 25%, CPU temperature 60. So yeah, I guess we can look it over here and see what generally is going on. TSEN 39C, that's my water temperature. It's off though. That thing reported like 29C when like at ambient, which is gonna be about 24. 22 even down here. It's almost 5 degrees off. So if it says 39, it's probably 34, which is probably consistent with what we'd be getting in the old rig. Now, if we go to the features, and we go to user scenario, and we go here to customize, this is where we can set all our fan speeds. And here's where it gets kind of comical. We're gonna click over here on CPU fan. And that's probably one of the stupidest things in history of mankind right here, at least as far as motherboard support software goes. It doesn't tell us the CPU temperature. We need some sort of separate application to tell us our CPU temperature. Now here's the funny thing that happens. So we bring out the hardware info here so that we doth have CPU temperature. So CPU appears to be right about there. That's gonna be our total, what's goings-onings. Now I bust out an old Prime 95 and I'm gonna do but two cores. And I do large FFT's maximum power consumption. So we're gonna do 2 cores. Now watch what happens here. Watch what happens. So our CPU is staying at a relatively high little turbo here, but our temperatures skyrocket to 90%. And then of course, because they're skyrocketing to 90%, our fan's gonna start ripping, because at 90%, that's when I got them engaged at about 60% here. To get them into their sweet spot between 12 and 1500 is when where these fans here are particularly effective on that rad. Anything more, they're just kind of spinning for nothing, right? And then of course, we're gonna have surges up and down as the load changes and the temperature fluctuates. Our fans are just gonna surge up and down and up and down. So like compared to what I'm used to with the 3000 series, it's kind of like, it's just like as soon as you do anything on them, even if it's just 1 or 2 cores, they just go full send. It's like you just have those 2 cores, they just run as hard as they can up to 90C, and then they just get their voltage and speed regulated from there. So it's a whole different ball game as far as thermal management goes, best I can tell. And even if we rip more here, let's stop this. Now if we go torture test and I go 16, right? 16, not 32. We have 16 physical cores, so we can max out the TDP of a processor generally by doing a 16 core test. And we're gonna see these numbers here jump up, boom. It's gonna register about 50% CPU usage, which is kind of, you know, that's gonna be the general categories why what we get with the coding. Maybe that's the reason why when we're encoding, we only get 50% CPU usage on a multi-threaded CPU, because the task's so intensive, there's not the opportunity for multi-threading to work. Multi-threading works because, you know, the CPU is faster than the data that can get fed to it. So it basically just caches up multiple tasks so that when the CPU gets bored waiting for the current task to feed it more information, it can go work on something else real quick. But if we have it just being thrown information constantly, it might not have the opportunity to multitask. And that's the reason why when we're rendering, we only see 50% usage, 50, 60% usage. So this is theoretical max TDP here. And yeah, we're busting out into the 90C, even though we have seen it higher to 94, 95. Last time I did this test, I saw something higher here. Oh, there it is, 214 watts package power. So that's 214 watts of heat. Theoretically, we're dumping into our loop right now. Of course, our fan's gonna panic up there. I go back and I go to sys fan 1, which is my third fan on that rad that only kicks in based on water temperature. Our water temperature is staying at 39C. So it's like the fans working as hard as they do doesn't necessarily make complete sense. I almost feel like I could disable CPU fan altogether, because that's an experiment I'd like to do. Hook it all up to just the system fan head header, which I can calibrate based on water temperature and just calibrate my fans to maintain certain water temperatures. Then they're only gonna actually spin up when they have to. Because especially if we have smaller tasks where the CPU isn't running very long, like it can spike in temperature and the water's gonna pull that away. Now, as this thing's set right now, last time I did this test, this temperature is gonna gradually rise until it hits the 42 degree threshold, or 41 right here. Then finally this extra fan is gonna kick in and then it's gonna maintain that. One thing I don't like about this software is, unlike the Asus software, I can't do like a hard jump. I can't put this ball right over top of this ball, so then boom, it just toggles on at 40. It has to have a gradual rise between 40 and 41, which is okay, it works. One thing I do like about the software is it's a little bit more flexible in how you can set your fans. Like, it's pretty much freestyle here. It warns you if you screw around, you're gonna find out. So it gives us the ability to set our fans wrong. AI Sweet doesn't do that. It'll straight up lock out certain settings in the fan. Once AI Sweet detects what the lower fan threshold is, it won't let you set it any lower. So I had to play around with this, figuring it out that 34% is basically the minimum that I can run that fan at. Any more than 34%, it's not gonna kick on. And we could pretty much turn off any fans we want. We could go here, we could drop the CPU fan to 0 if we want, just like that. We don't want that, but we can. So this ended up resulting in an interesting dynamic dialing in my CPU fans. So right here, about 25% is our minimum fan speed. I figured that was a happy medium where my fans on the Rad would kick on reliably, but also be like dead slow, just to say that we have flow through that Rad. But it meant that I couldn't do frig all until we hit 70, because we would be in the low 50s, mid 60s, just idle, surfing some Facebook, doing basic stuff we don't need the fans to spin up for. And even if we do have an auxiliary fan monitoring water temperature. But then as soon as the system starts working hard, I had to put the curve here. So it's just like a quick shot between 70 and 85C. And then finally 90 brings us up to 60%, which is about where we are now. And then we do have panic mode. I guess panic mode would be, we'd have to set it to 95. Oh, but I just heard my fan spin up, so we're already in that threshold, eh? 92, 93. We don't need it to be there, so yeah, I guess we'll set it back to 100C, 100% at 100C. There's no apply either. You don't click apply, it just goes. And then it auto saves, I guess. I guess in a pinch, we could set up manual fan. Oh, there. Because I did fan calibration, it knows here that 25% is where I could go. Wait, it won't let me do intermediate settings. You just click to toggle between the different settings. Okay, so what happens if we do dial it all the way down to 25% and just leave those fans brewing? So they sink down to not much. Well, that's when we go back to sysfan. We're still at 40. So that's the question on my mind. With those fans going that slow and that much Rad on what is reporting to be 200 and almost 220 watts of TDP. Oh, we're seeing the water temperature come up though, eh? Let's see how bad it'll get. 41 means that this fan finally kicks on. 42 means it's gonna start going up. That's the funny thing, you know? You gotta figure out what curve to dial in to maintain the equilibrium you want. Like, we should never see this water go higher than 60. We should never see it go higher than 50. I should probably bring that curve back. But then, that's with one fan. It hit 43, it's bobbling, it's cresting on 43, there it is. That fan wants to go to 1000 RPM. And that's this fan here. So these are the two on the CPU. Oh, yeah, it's warm here, bud. I'm actually thinking of going negative pressure or positive pressure and turning this guy around and just have everything come out the top. That third fan is right here, so it's obscured. So it's blowing up against this. There are vents right here and then a fraction bit right there. I almost feel, just from what I'm seeing right now, considering how hard the processor is running, I could almost just leave it in this setting here. Leave those main fans twisting at 25% and just let that secondary fan, oh, we're at 44. What's our pump set at? Pump is on sysfan 3 header, 1900, 1950. I'm trying to remember what my pump settings were. I recall the minimum is like 1600, which should be here. And then 19 is effective max. So I actually want to drop this ball here, because the pump is diminishing gains. The pump's not like a fan. Moving the water faster is not going to make it any cooler. There's a sweet spot that you have to find with a pump. There's like a minimum speed, which I believe was about 1700 on this pump. And then around 1900, it's this, it's been so long since I've done this, but I feel like my instincts are telling me That's maximum effective speed. You don't get any more efficient cooling. Now there is an overspeed and underspeed. Obviously if it's too slow, you won't get good cooling. I tested that. I think I had it at 1300 RPM once and it just wasn't doing it. And then it's also said if it goes too fast, it doesn't have enough time for the heat to transfer, so it becomes less effective. So there's a middle sweet spot you have to maintain. Again, this is another thing I could probably set to manual and just leave it there. Like what's manual 50%? Oh, well, no, it's not giving us a whole heck of a lot of options here. 24, I don't want to go that fast. Go back to here. This was good here. Looking back at SysFan 1, we're holding at 44 so far and 1000 RPM, and it's not really that loud. I almost feel like I should just torture test it like this. Wait, it just jumped as oh boy, went up to 45. So the rule of thumb is 100 watts per 120 mil of rad. And based on the specifications I recall of that rad, that sweet spot is with the fans running around 12 to 1500 RPM. So we're gonna say that's a total 300 watt rad. We're probably, with those fans at half speed, able to dissipate 100 watts. And then this guy, once it hits about 1500, that would be about 200 watts of dissipation that rad should be able to do. Mind you, that fan's half obscured, so I don't know if that counts. If it goes to 46, I'm gonna make some changes. 1200 is usually pretty good, and again, it's not sounding like obnoxious. I feel like I want to tweak on this front fan though. That's what, SysFan 4, which quite dumbingly is not reporting any RPM. I'm gonna bring her up to 25, and that's based on system temperature. I don't know where that is. I guess it's just measuring generally the inside. There's a sensor on the motherboard somewhere. So right now it's sitting here. I gotta judge RPM by like sticking my finger in here. Let's try bringing that right there. 40% at 70, that should bring it up a little bit, yeah. I have the side open right now too, so my thermal dynamics aren't gonna be exactly correct. Great thing about that big bulky fan though, is it doesn't need to spin very much to like, you feel a breeze there. It's not pressure, but it's definitely chucking in here. And actually based on the heat that's kicking off this, I think this extra exhaust is probably a good idea. So I think I'll just leave that as is. I suppose that might be another fan I could probably put on manual. Oh, not a lot of options though. Hey, it's reporting an RPM. Oh, I guess it does have an RPM report, just under a certain RPM that it can't interpret it. That feels pretty good actually. So what, we would have to start it at 50% to actually do something? This fan's actually too loud at this speed. I'm gonna set it to 30% at 50. And then now I have to copy that over to SysFan 5. The rest is the same already, pretty much. How's our SysFan 1 looking? Oh, we hit 46 at 1220. Okay, so let's go back to CPU and let's kick them up to 50%. That's gonna be in the 1000 RPM range. So yeah, that should be about where they're sitting now, or where they should sit. That should result in some fairly effective dissipation. We won't know for sure unless this water temperature starts to come down. Trying to find that equilibrium. Oh, there it goes. So yeah, we don't need those fans to kick much more higher than 1100 RPM to effectively cool this system, between 25 and 50. Let's see if that number keeps going down. Yeah, there's a nice aura of heat coming off here now. Oh, I just heard this thing change. Yeah, water temperature's coming down. Look at that. Our CPU's ripping probably almost about as hard as it can. 214 watts, 95. See, it's hitting our 95. Our turbo's down to 4.62. That said, just because we can doesn't mean we should. Huh, okay, let's try something here. Let's set CPU back to smart mode. Let it behave as is tradition. Go back here, go back to sys. Oh, so our water temperature's down to 44. Package power went up to 220. Now is that because the test changed? Because the idea is if we do get it cooler, we'll get more turbo, right? And I guess it's really not that loud. Yeah, okay, that's the only thing I'm unsure of. Did a test change on us? Yeah, a new section just started. It went from that number to that number. Okay, so our little results here are a bit skewed, but as you can see, it goes in a repetitive pattern. So we can wait till we get to the 110s again and then see how this sits. Water temperature is coming down, which means our auxiliary fan, our auxiliary fan isn't gonna be as useful. We should have this system dialed in so that this auxiliary fan's always running while we're under this kind of load. So I feel like it's safe to say that one of these SR2 rads, if it was just a 240, it would be enough to cool this CPU. Oh, yeah, look, the turbo went down. Even though our water temperature's at an all-time low, we're back to 218 watts, 94C, and our turbo dropped to 4.5. And that's doing what? Still 2600s. Now we're in the 76. Oh, you know what else? Iterations of this, whatever that is. So we were turboing low there. I wonder if these are different things. Either way, half the goal here is to dial in these fans so it doesn't have to freak out. So I might maybe start this at 40, and then what's this? At 85C, 44%, no, 50% at 85 will do. Because we're past there now. Because if it's not gonna go past into much past here, I almost feel like we want 50% up to 90. Because sometimes it goes, well, no, it's kind of in the high 90s, 42%. Maybe here, it shouldn't need to go more than 1400 to do its job. So if hardware info, we're at 91 right now, 60% at 94C, 1200 RPM, that's a good sweet spot. So it's gonna stay at 40%, probably even a little bit less. Brewing idle, 50% at 87C, because 50% is pretty good. And I found 87C was maybe where it was sitting, just doing other tasks that aren't artificial like this. I think that'll be good. Sys fan 1, it's just doing its job here. Now what we're gonna do is I'm gonna stop this test and watch this number drop. 83, 77, 72. So that tells me my cooling solution is being effective. That water is removing heat quickly. This thing's gonna run until that goes down to 40, there it goes. Now, oh boy, it's gonna kick off now. And our CPU, we're in the 60s now. 60s puts it right about here, which should be 40%. Wait, that doesn't make sense. Because manual, 50% was, oh, 50% was 1,000. Okay, yeah. I want it down lower than that. I did want it down to like 25%. Look at that, our CPU's down, yeah, down to 60, 25. And that's what wattage? 66 watts. So that rad with those two fans running at that speed can dissipate 66 watts without like even trying. Hell, 66 watts? We could almost turn those fans off, to be honest. I wish I had another ball to play with. Like, can we add another point somewhere here? Like, is there a way to do that? I guess not. Okay, well, that's where I'm gonna leave her for now. So, benchmark, pre-thermal tuned. I still think I want to experiment with tuning the fans based on water temperature, but I think we almost have that emulated with the settings I just dialed in. So I don't know. Either way, I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, stay tuned, because sometimes I like to tinker with computers. I definitely have more plans, because I gotta try those processors and motherboards up the upstairs computer, stuff like that. I gotta pull that video card out now. Oh boy. Yeah. All right.